In this flip through, we're taking a look at painting war, bringing your wall models to life. This softcover book is issue 10 of the Vallejo distributed painting guide series, this time covering the Wild West in over 64 full-colour pages. Things start with an introduction from the editor, who it seems is stepping down as editor, but we'll leave you to read that for yourselves. Next, there's a double-page spread of the contents, showing off an impressive array of painted Wild West models, all of which this book will guide you through the painting of. Page 9 introduces this issue's painter, Jose Antonio Bustamante, also known as Buster. Buster previously wrote issue 4 of Painting War, and he has a long history in miniature painting. He's got work on studio models for various companies under his belt, so he's more than qualified to splash the paint around. Pages 10 to 11 are a short introduction to the equipment and painting approach Buster uses. Nothing in depth here, but a few tips and suggested products. What is perhaps most surprising is that there are just 4 paragraphs given to general painting concepts. He describes his colour triads approach and the order in which he usually paints models. It's quite simple, and what follows is more of the paint by numbers kind of guides, detailing specific colours and basic placement. This is no bad thing at all if your goal is to get impactful models on the table with minimum strife. If you're after a complex and cerebral book on colour theory and advanced painting considerations, you might not find too much to learn here. The guides proper begin on page 12, with step-by-steps covering the painting of various elements on a model, rather than specific miniatures. These guides are largely visual, with clear photographs, and lots of them, that show each stage of the painting process. A box out lists the paints and mix for each stage, and occasional tips are given by a chilled out Sam Elliott looking wise old cowboy, actually an artisan Texas Ranger that is painted later in the guide. These offer good advice, occasional alternative paint mixers, and the book's best weird translation. We'll get to that in a moment. The guides are all very well designed, and the clear visually striking layout is probably the thing the book does best. Fortunate in a publication packed with painting guides. In seeing the progression through the stages, you should be both inspired and informed. Covering clothing, leather, flesh, hair and moustache, weapons, horse, terrain, and finishing with wood, this is everything you should need to paint Western miniatures. The colours and mixes can, of course, also be applied to more diverse miniatures. These guides end on page 24, but before we move on, let's talk a bit about the translation element I mentioned. It's clear that the author's first language is not English, and it seems that the guide has also been translated by someone whose first language is not English. When we point out typos in the publications we review, we sometimes wonder if we're being too critical. We work on a magazine every month, perhaps we are more eagle-eyed than most, and getting a few things wrong really isn't the end of the world. However, in this book, we found confused sentence structure, weird descriptions, and very odd word choices all over the place, so we think it's worth mentioning. It's the following tip in the section on horses that left us the most bemused. We could make an intermediate light, applying at the first light only 25% of meat mate. If we do this, we get a greater contrast, very useful in the big horses. Our inner detective sees the capitalisation of meat mate and suspects it's a really bad translation of the Vallejo paint called flat flesh, but who can really be sure? Anyway, back to the flipping through. There are adverts until pages 27 to 30's colour chart, which covers the different tones in the guide, along with page references for them. This is useful, a visual index to aid you in flipping the colour you want to apply. A really nice painting aid. From page 31, the guide gets more specific, covering the painting of 35 individual models from different manufacturers. Things start off with a sheriff who has already been largely covered in the sections on clothing, but extra detail is added by giving him his badge. The guide also includes a "Did you know that?" with each model, and these do add some historical flavour, although we might have preferred to see more painting advice. The cowboy from the front cover is the first fully mounted model, and seeing the details and finished paint job does get us itching to head for the painting desk. It's not just the American gunslingers of the West either. There are citizens, showgirls, Mexicans, Union and Confederate soldiers, and Native Americans from different tribes. If you want to try your hand at these specific miniatures, each has the manufacturer listed. The mounted Comanche is one of our favourites and shows off Buster's technique very nicely, before we head on through historical figures: Custer Little Bighorn, Doc Holliday, Wild Bill Hickok, and unnamed workers, a female gunslinger, the Texas Ranger who was given our meat mate tips earlier. It's a pretty exhaustive selection. And on the subject of meat mates, on page 58 there are more of these meaty mates in the form of different beasts. Horses first with a Prospector mule, a cavalry trumpeter, Pony Express rider, one of our favourite paint jobs, and then there are even buffalo, bears, wolves and livestock. A Dixon miniature stagecoach is the impressive final flourish in a comprehensive, vibrant guide that will, despite our translation concerns, help you create a stunning set of painted Wild West miniatures. This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated Magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.